The next important topic we are going to talk about is about all of us. We all are consumers in the society. So we have to see how a consumer is viewed by the producers in an economy and what a consumer wants from his consumption pattern. First of all, we will be studying the equilibrium which the consumer wants and the satisfaction that he wants with the help of an analysis that is called utility analysis. हम सब बहुत सारी चीज़ें परचेज करते हैं, पर उन सारी चीज़ों को परचेज करने के लिए व्हाट डू वी लुक फॉरवर्ड? वी लुक फॉरवर्ड टू द यूटिलिटी दे विल गिव अस. अगर कोई चीज़ मुझे यूटिलिटी नहीं देती तो मैं उसको नहीं खरीदूंगी. सो यूटिलिटी इज डिफाइंड एज द वांट सेटिस्फाइंग पावर ऑफ अ कमोडिटी. Supposedly, I'm hungry, I'll eat a chapati because it will satisfy my want of hunger. But if I'm not hungry, that very chapati will have no utility for me. Utility can be technically studied as marginal and total. Marginal utility means how much the total utility which I am getting from the consumption of certain units of a commodity will change due to consumption of one more additional unit. And it can be calculated as total utility of nth unit minus total utility of nth minus 1 unit, which will be very clear in the next table I'll show you. But before that, let me tell you what is total utility. Total utility means which we derive from the consumption of various units of a commodity. So in a way, it is a summation of the marginal utility. अगर मैं 5 आइसक्रीम के कप्स खा जाऊं तो उन सब से मिलने वाली total कुल utility will be total utility, but the separately, if I talk about utility derived from first unit, second unit, third unit, fourth unit, will be marginal utility. So you can see in the diagram that as my total utility increases, there's a relationship between TU and MU. My marginal utility will fall because हर अगले यूनिट से मिलने वाली यूटिलिटी हमेशा हमें पहले से कम लगती है. Let me give you a very, very simple example. Supposedly, I'm very thirsty. The first glass of water which I'll consume will give me more utility. The second will give a little less because my need has already been satisfied. The third, a little even lesser. And the fourth, by the fourth unit, I'll be full, so MU will become 0. When MU becomes 0, total utility becomes maximum and constant. And when MU starts becoming negative, total utility starts to fall. This relationship is very, very important. So, once again, we can revise it that MU is calculated from TU and MU is positive, TU is increasing, MU is 0, TU is constant and maximum, MU is negative and TU is falling. Now, on the basis of this concept of marginal utility and total utility, a law has been formulated. This law is called Law of Diminishing Marginal Utility. It's just the same thing which I told you right now, that the more we consume of a thing, the marginal utility derived from every successive unit would just go on falling. But this law is based on certain assumptions. So the first assumption is that utility can be measured in cardinal numbers. Cardinal number means 1, 2, 3. So we need to assess that how much utility in numbers we are getting from the consumption of various units of a commodity. Second assumption is that marginal utility of every commodity is independent. That means if we are consuming a basket of goods, the utilities that we get from separate commodities are not dependent upon each other. The third assumption is that marginal utility of money remains constant. The utility that we get from 1 rupee would be similar to the utility that we will get from the next rupee. Why? Because the purchasing power of the money is going to remain constant. The next point is that there should be continuous consumption. आप खुद सोचिए, अगर आज मैं एक आइसक्रीम का कप खाऊं और एक आइसक्रीम का कप 10 दिन बाद खाऊं, तो क्या मैं उनकी यूटिलिटीज़ को आपस में कंपेयर कर सकती हूँ? बिकॉज दे आर being consumed in different environments, in different circumstances, at different levels of hunger. So this is not possible. So this means that consumption should be continuous for analyzing such kind of a law. Then, next assumption is that income, price, tastes should remain constant. And every unit of the commodity consumed should be of same quality and size. Let me give you a very, very interesting example here. Supposedly, you feel very, very hungry, and the first chapati your mother gives you is a plain chapati. So you might not like it much, but the next chapati your mother gives you is an aloo parantha. So obviously you are supposed to like it more. So the law will not apply if the quality and the size of the units consumed is not same. So we need to assume that the quality and the size of the units consumed is same. Now let's analyze this law with the help of a schedule and a diagram. So we can say that on one hand we can write down the number of cups of consumption, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, and then we can write down the table showing marginal utilities derived from these cups, that is 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and -1. Then we can put it in the form of a graph and show that how we increase the consumption and the marginal utility begins to fall. So at a point it reaches 0 and then it becomes negative. Now, this law of diminishing marginal utility, dear friends, has some limitations. Everything has its pros and cons, and so does the law of diminishing marginal utility. First of all, the critics have criticized the concept that utility cannot be measured in cardinal numbers. Do we always measure the things we consume in cardinal numbers? Do we assess their utility in cardinal numbers? No. In practical life, we are not doing it. So we can say that utility cannot be measured in cardinal numbers. Second, utilities are not independent. Normally, the utility we get from one commodity is actually dependent upon the complementary good that it comes along with. So that means to assume that utilities are independent is not a very correct thing. Third point, marginal utility of money is not constant. Critics has also criticized this assumption that marginal utility of money is constant. This I'll explain you with the help of an example. Supposedly there's a rich man and supposedly there's a poor man. The urge to earn more money for a rich man will be less, but his urge to part with the money he has will be more. On the contrary, for the poor man, the urge to earn more money will be more and to part with will be less. So what does this show? This clearly reflects that the person who has more stock of a thing, for him, the value or the utility of the additional extra unit is less. So it's very clear that marginal utility of money also does fall. Similarly, we can say that income, prices, and tastes also do not remain constant as have been assumed in this law. Then this law also does not apply to certain goods like good book and good poetry. Good book and book poetry are such a things which registers in our mind very gradually. So as we consume more of these goods, we start to like them more and more. And with this, our utility increases. But this law does apply to them in a very longer period. After, say, listening to the same poetry or listening to the same songs for a period of 1 year, we start getting a little bored up with them. So we can say that here this law applies in a little delayed form. Now, moving on to the next thing, how do we achieve consumers' equilibrium with the help of this law? And what actually is consumers' equilibrium? Supposedly, I put a little marble into a bowl. So when I put a little marble into a bowl, the marble will move here and there for a while and ultimately it will settle in the middle. So this is what is equilibrium. Similarly, if consumer is looking for the best position where he can get maximum satisfaction from his resources, he'll move here and there and ultimately would like to settle at a point. This point where he settles is called his equilibrium. Technically, consumer is in equilibrium when he regards his actual behavior as the best possible under the circumstances and feels no urge to change his behavior as long as the circumstances remain unchanged. If he is consuming a single commodity, he knows that with every additional unit, his marginal utility is decreasing and he will settle at a point where his marginal utility in terms of money is equal to the price he is paying. So we can equate the two things, that is MU and price, and we get consumer's equilibrium. But when the consumer is consuming two commodities, then we need to achieve the things in a little different manner. Then we need to equate marginal utility of X divided by marginal utility of Y should be equal to the prices of the two commodities respectively, that is price of X divided by price of Y. So that's all in case of utility analysis. Utility analysis was based on a very, very important assumption, that was cardinal measurability of the numbers. But another set of economists came on the front and they discarded this assumption. They said that no human beings actually makes a cardinal measurability of the utility. So the concept was dropped